Alright, let's try that again. I had to reboot because I think last time I had my sampling rate set at 1200 or something, but I can't seem to find where that value is. Well, it's at 320, which is kind of arbitrarily high, but I guess it's okay. Oh, yeah, something like that. Alright, let's go ahead and tell Twitter that I am streaming. I'm sure that they're all desperate to know. So, over on Twitter, I'll just say that I'm hashtag streaming, hashtag indiedev, my hashtag game. I guess I should change it from saying game dev programming to game dev programming and modeling. Modeling doesn't sound... I wonder whether modeling is assumed to mean standing in front of a camera. 3D modeling, do you think it is? Hello, Beefy Whale. Yeah, there it is, 3D modeling. So today, there are a lot of things we have to do. We probably should finish off the serialization thing, and we did have some issues with that last time, so I could delve into that. Another option is I could continue to 3D model this new ship class. I am happy to do either one if either of you have any interest in one in specific. I don't know why, but recently Twitch has been really feisty with showing me my own channel, so if you are noticing serious problems in the stream, let me know. Or even not so serious problems. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's make sure that I'm actually giving out sound here. Yep, okay. I think the stream is working well. I've had some problems with the past couple of weeks. It's broken itself a couple of times. But I think it's working out now. Alright, so the last time we tried to have this work, we had this issue where it would return an empty bracket, regardless of what happened. So here we're going to go ahead and just test it out here. Debug.log. Eva Luigi says the delay seems fine and the loud and clear is good. That's good because I have my air conditioner running full tilt. Just got home, so it's quite loud. Changes.count plus changes times 2 to track. And I don't know whether the bug is something stupid or whether JSON utility isn't working on arrays of strings for some reason. I am running on the beta, so I guess that wouldn't be too much of a surprise. Anyway, we've got to pull up our Blumpo here. Now, this Blumpo has a couple of things that are different from the default, so we should get a nice clear list of the changes. The one change, I should say. That doesn't look like a reboot. Let's go ahead and turn it on. That's odd. I guess it worked. Yeah! So here we can see the ship serialization plus an empty bracket. Here's the empty braces. Found 4 changes times 2 to track. So why is it giving me the empty braces? So changes is a very simple list of strings. If we were to do a for each string s in changes debug.log s, what are we going to see? Options. No, that can't be it. 2, 4. Found 4 changes. Options, room, current room, 5-meter hab room. That looks an awful lot like 4 things to me. So when we serialize them... Wait. These aren't strings. That's interesting. They should be strings. They must be strings. This is odd. So Eviluigi says, you can still use an AC. It's pretty depressing, but where I am we have 15 degrees C instead of 25 to 30 degrees C, which is what's normal. It's actually not too hot here in Boston. It's chilly enough that lots of people have gone back to wearing pants. But it's really humid. So, you know, it was like 77 degrees inside, and I decided to kick on the air conditioning one last time. So there's something wrong with this setup. Let's go ahead and try some additional stuff here. String array equals changes.toArray. Let's go ahead and put in some extra size here. I don't remember whether it's 15 pixels or just 15. Let's go ahead and make it big. Oh, of course there's no count. It's length. Shorts, Eviluigi. They were wearing shorts. But the output is still empty. Let's go ahead and see whether or not I can serialize it without the toArray here. There's obviously a bug somewhere in this JSON utility, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. The JSON utility is why I switched to 5.5, so I'll be pretty upset if I can't get this to work. Why can't it serialize an array of strings? Maybe I will just do some modeling for the day. Yeah, pants are long pants. In England, it's underwear, but here it's trousers. But if you say trousers in America, you'll get laughed at. So everyone says pants. And then there's shorts, which are shorter than pants. And then there's yoga pants, and then there's cutoffs, and then there's lots of other specific kinds of pants, like culottes, and short shorts and hot pants. Cargo pants, cargo shorts. Bell bottoms. Ooh, bell bottoms. Yeah. Jorts. You know. Well, the only thing you could do on topic would be to tell me why JSON.toJSON doesn't know what to do with an array of strings. Can it only do classes? That's the same problem we had before. That would be stupid. Alright, well, what happens if we decide that we're going to just serialize every damn thing? We still have to store the changes, but if we serialize everything, we can get away without... like this. We can just go we can just say JSON.serialize this, and let's just see what it has to say for itself. Now this is a lot less efficient because it is saving all of the values rather than just the ones that are different. So here you can see resource, fuel, max amount 100, amount 100, priority 10. This is all correct, but we don't actually want to serialize the vast majority of that. We really only want to serialize the amount. And that's what I was doing, but it wasn't letting me, because apparently JSON utility can serialize classes, but not built-in array objects. Seriously? Come on. So if I put the built-in array object into a class, it would serialize fine. And I know, because that's what I used to do. So here we have some links to instance IDs. We're going to have to be careful with those, since they're never going to be the same 2 times in a row. Yeah, it's dumb. Public class array workaround. System.serializable. Public string array. Array workaround. Equals new array workaround. Dot array equals changes dot to array. Yay! That's so dumb! That's so dumb! That hurts my brain! Well, as I was told, Evaluigi, creative is the only slot in there that's not actually an actual game. If I've accidentally signed up to play a specific game, let me know, because I don't mean to do that. Well, I guess if that's the workaround, that's the workaround. I can't do anything about it, but it works. So here you can see that we are seeing the changes that each one has saved, rather than seeing a giant list of everything. If we go up to the cargo, 4-meter cargo has 1 mixins. Here it is. Let's go ahead and fix up some of this here. Yeah, sorry, pink hair. There's JSON utility is slightly better than it used to be, but it's still fucking bad. So, anyway, let's go ahead and get rid of a lot of these default values here. If changes.count equals 0, return null. And we're going to go back over here to this, and we've got these mix-in lists. Comment that out. Hopefully not. I can't take that much more stupidity all in a row. So right now we've got a lot of value here coming down the line, because we're now only serializing the pieces that are different from the prefab, which is a huge help. But the problem is that some of these pieces Hello, 6 of 10. Some of these pieces are saving things that aren't stringable. So we say, oh, look, the options changed, or oh, look, the current room changed, but we have no concept of what that actually means because those aren't strings. They're either object descriptors or they're names, but they're not strings. Now, for a big part of this, what we need to do is make it so that these things that we are asking questions, rather than just returning arbitrary non-stringable objects, we have to have them return some kind of thing that we can correctly deserialize later. And that means overriding the toString operator on most of these, which isn't too bad. The array we don't really care about. Options are going to be just options, but current room, we want this current room. It's actually fine the way it is. The 5-meter hab room medical tells us everything we need to know about which room we're getting, because that's going to be in this options list. The problem is that the options list isn't actually different from the default options list. It just feels different because it's not the same object. It's a different array containing the exact same links. So we'll probably just go ahead and ignore anything that doesn't nicely string. I'm just not sure whether I want to ignore it before or after serialization. Either way, this is going well, but I feel really dumb because I had to put back in the dumb workaround that I went to 5.5 to take out. Although I admit this is a much, much lighter case. It's a smaller workaround. But it's still really stupid. I bet you in the 5.5 release version it won't be necessary. Let's go ahead and add some comments so that we don't forget. This array workaround is necessary because JSON utilities cannot... JSON utilities? Yeah, JSON utility cannot serialize a string array unless it's inside a class. Ha 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 ha. To do. Check if this is fixed. Ha ha ha. Wouldn't be needed if JSON utility worked on arrays of strings. All right. Well, that's programming. If that's raging, you guys have a pretty low tolerance. But now I have to decide whether I want to keep pushing forward with the serialization or let that sit and build calluses around it and do some 3D modeling. I kind of think I'm going to switch over to 3D modeling for a while, because I am, in fact, kind of angry. So, might be safer for everyone if I do some 3D modeling instead. So this is the new class of ships. It's a T1 class of ship, and I spent some time building various attachments to it. We don't need these anymore. Like so. And if we look at it in our scene view, let's hide the Blumpo. This is the sort of thing we're looking at right now. But there's lots more stuff that I need to add, so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to add in some more connectors and exterior modules before I start on the interior. So right now there are two kinds of docking clamp type things, connectors, on this ship. There are the 2-meter connectors, which you can see here, and there are the 4-meter connectors, which you can see here. The 4-meter connectors clasp rather than surround, and the 2-meter connectors are just mounting points. That looks just as bad, doesn't it? Whatever. It doesn't look bad when it's imported, and that's the big part. The big deal. So let's go ahead and build a couple more 2-meter mounts and then build a couple more things to put on them. First, we're going to want to build a basic surface mount. So this basic surface mount will just go on the surface of the ship wherever you want to stick it, and will provide a connector for your various 2-meter objects, whether those are cryotubes or satellite dishes or whatever. And I think what we're going to do is make it 1 meter long, stick out a meter. And the reason for that is simply that if we make it a meter long, it'll snap well with a 1 meter setup. And that's a little bit important to us, so we're going to go ahead and have that be the case. No, that didn't work. So to make this look at least a little bit appealing, let's go ahead and give it 4-way symmetry. Like this. We add in a mirror modifier like this. X and Y, X and Z symmetry like this. And then we just turn on clipping, extrude down. That didn't extrude straight down, did it? And then pull in, and then merge at center. And this here, we're not going to do that. We've got big plans for the back here, because we want it to feel like it's really bolted onto the surface. And obviously this is not the most secure looking setup. So we're going to go ahead and add in 2 slices here. And we're going to add in some heavy clamp objects. Well, 6 of 10, today you're watching it right on time, although that might be between 1 and 2:30 for you. I have no idea where you are. But I'm glad you're getting some use of them, even if I can't understand why you would. People are talking here. 6 of 10 says that it's 2 a.m. where he is. 2 p.m. 2 p.m. where he is. That means you're on the West Coast somewhere. That's fine. Or, not the West Coast, but west of me. Maybe you're in Montana or something. I don't know. Now, hopefully, this will look a little bit more like it has been stapled onto the surface of the vehicle. There are a couple more things I want to do. Add in some nice decorations. That did not work out. Try it again. There we are. On a dental floss ranch, huh? Do you grow dental floss? Is that, it's like mattresses. You grow them on the planet, Squelchavlon 9 or whatever it was. Alright, so now what we're going to do is extrude and then rotate it so that it is going to go into the surface, but we're going to want to line it up like this. Rotate 45, extrude, rotate 45, and negative 45. There we are. No, no, you bent. You're not supposed to bend. Close enough. Alright. So now we've got a little bit of pipe work here, which should make it a little bit nicer for us. And we'll just go ahead and put a cap on the end of the pipe so that it feels a little bit more real. Like so. And there we have our 2-meter clamp. 2-meter flat mount. Or mount flat, I guess. Hello, Rost88. I'm modeling spaceships because I spent the first 10 minutes getting angry. So our flat mount, I forgot to UV anything. So let's go ahead and do a little bit better here. Remember some of the more major parts of this operation. Like making it look less fake, slightly. Oh, that's not going to work. That's a little bit less fakey. And then what we'll do is actually UV unwrap it and give it some materials. So it'll need 2 materials, I think. It's going to need hull and heavy hull. That's hull again. There we are. I also used Warning Orange a lot, so let's go ahead and see how it looks with some Warning Orange in it. So this would be the Warning Orange. Oh, there's nothing on the back. Hold on. Oh. So we're going to need to UV extract this as well. And then we're going to, what did I say? Yeah, we need to assign some materials. So why don't we go ahead and make this leg heavy hull. There we are. Now we'll save it and take a look at how it looks. 6 of 10 says, looks cool, but cryopods look cooler. I have cryopods. I'm not sure if you're saying that because you noticed them. But I already built cryopods for this because that's how you keep the fuel cold. When you're running with liquid hydrogen, you need some cryopods. So let's go ahead and stick the correct materials onto this thing. Hull. And we're actually using interior for the moment. Oh, that's not where that goes. This is where that goes. And then we're going to put in the Warning Orange on the inside here. There. You know, those pipes don't look right. Let's go ahead and fix the pipes up. Yes, I'm sorry, 6 of 10. I'm in literal mode. Grind, grind, grind. Grind, grind, grind. Good grinder. Hurrah! Okay, let's go ahead and stick this onto a surface somewhere and see how it looks. Yoink. Looks kind of like that. And then what you do is you take one of these cryopods here, the aforementioned cryopod, and you rotate it into position like so. Oh, that didn't work. There we are. You know what I think this needs? Projections. 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 Guess I'd go best here. Six of 10 likes it, which is nice. And Eros says that his freaking boots are pissing him off. Yep, I haven't bothered to model shoes in a long time. Pink Hair says it needs a seal or a washer. Yep, I think you are right. So, the question is, how do you want to put in a seal or a washer? And I think our best bet is probably to just stick it in right here. And be like, whatever. Ooh. Yeah, vaguely like that, I guess. Let's go ahead and do it a little bit less half-assed. It's funny that doing less is less half-assed. People are talking here. 6 of 10 says I got into Sculptress. I did that a while back. But it's not free, or it wasn't when I was playing with it, I don't think. Or was it? Was that the free one? I can't remember anymore. Pinker says, what's the word? Gasket. Gasket. 6 of 10 says he's having trouble with hands and claws. Welcome to the club. They're some of the most difficult parts. And Evil Luigi says, good. Ding! And then sticks his tongue out. Alright, so now it looks like this. What happened to the projections? That's odd. They're right here. ZBrush and Sculptress. Yeah. I really liked them back in ye old days, but they've been around forever. And I just feel they're not as friendly to take all the way into games as they could be. They produce very expensive models, you know? So... Oh, I'm an idiot. That's why they're not showing up. Evil Luigi says he's never ever heard anyone make a sound effect for a star before, and I think that's because he's been hanging out with the wrong crowd. Eros says he's not having any problem using Sculptress to make low poly meshes, which is really surprising, and that's nice. By the way, I normally don't shill, but there is a humble bundle out for GameMaker right now, and if any of you are having a hard time doing game dev in Unity, GameMaker is much more approachable, and that would not be a bad call if you wanted to get something you could use. The only reason I say that is because Unity is a bit of a high hurdle for a lot of beginners, and GameMaker's not. GameMaker is an easy learn. Yep, it is pretty limited. But you can get it for $1 now, so whatever. Ah, come on. No, GameMaker Pro is not free on Steam. It costs $150. But GameMaker Pro on Humble costs $1. So that's kind of why I was bringing it up, because it's only true for another couple of hours. And if any of you are on the fence, buying GameMaker Pro for $1 is pretty good. So if you're the sort of person who needs an easy game system, and Unity is annoyingly complicated, that's not a bad one. Yeah, GameMaker Studio Pro is $150. Yeah, if you can't afford $1, then that's another category of problem, I'm afraid. Eros says that Unity is damn friendly compared to UE. That's definitely true. UE is much more of a large studio environment. But on the other hand, UE has a lot of stuff it can do that Unity really struggles with. So I never knock UE as much as I don't really use it very often. But of course, I'm not knocking GameMaker either. Whatever tool you use is great as long as it lets you produce. I mean, if you want to go the full big deal, you could always go with Amazon's new lumber mill, which is not a new thing at all. It's the Crytek engine, and that doesn't come with any sort of helpful guidance at all. That's strictly professional industry grade stuff that no one will ever explain to you. So if you want a real challenge, try that on for size. And if you don't want a real challenge, try GameMaker on for size. Well, Game Maker Studio Pro is a substantially beefier product um, than Game Maker is. So, you know, it's sort of like it's not even the same grade as Unity versus Unity Pro. They're definitely different tiers. So I think I'm gonna have to remake this. I don't like how it turned out. Hurrah! Let's waste time with Craig. So I think the core issue for me is that I ended up making something that was the same size as the dock I'll end up needing. And I wanted to do the opposite, and I forgot about that. So got to do it again. Yay! Well, it's rather limited in comparison to UE and Unity, but it can do a lot. So it's hard for me to ever say that it's limited because I used to play around with engines back in the old days, and those were limited. I know plenty of people who have released Game Maker games that sell for money. So if you want to do what Game Maker lets you do, then it's the right choice. And if you don't, then it's the wrong choice. As with everything, I suppose. Erost says, maybe something is wrong with me, but I'm even looking at Blender and my head kind of explodes, and I'm totally fine with ZBrush. Why? Because ZBrush is a sculpting program, and Blender is a modeling program. That means that they use completely different approaches. ZBrush is great, so is Sculptris, at producing products, meshes that look like things. But they're a little bit rough at producing solid animatable products. At least they were 5 years ago. Maybe that's different now. Yeah, that naked lady is the demo lady. She's 1.5 meters tall, and she keeps my parts correctly configured. That might have sounded really bad. She keeps my parts to scale. Oh, that sounds bad too. Let's just leave it. I don't actually need her in the foreground this time, though. We'll go ahead and move her aside for a bit. 6 of 10 says, who taught you Blender? Nobody taught me Blender. That's why I'm not very good at it. You guys grow... I don't think many of you understand how much older I am than the average viewer here. You're growing up in an era where tutorials are easy to find. Back in my day, if you got Blender, or even a paid product like Maya, there were no tutorials. And you literally just floundered for an eon. And you'd go to the library and you'd check out learn how to do X in the library, and it turns out that it was, 10 years out of date or whatever. So it's really great that now you have the option to actually watch just an infinite number of YouTube videos that do all of the teaching. It's super, super great. I'm the same age as many of my viewers, but I'm substantially older than the rest. And there we go. Let's go ahead and round off some of these edges. Hello. There we are. Bevel everything! Well, one of the issues with age in this industry in particular is that this is a super ageist industry. And I'm old enough now that searching for new jobs is actually quite difficult. People just don't get hired once they reach, you know, above about 30. The half-life in the industry is 30, or less than that, you know. If you're over 30, you're not going to get hired very much. Which is kind of stupid and annoying, but it's not like you can do anything about it. 6 of 10 says Patreon. Not sure what I would get out of Patreon. I don't need any more money. I have a good job right now. Just hopefully it'll last a lot longer. Who knows? I've already been with it for a while. I just do this stuff for kicks. Now, what the heck? This extrusion is really terrible. Maybe. I'm in America, and I haven't gotten any offers to work overseas or anything, so I wouldn't be able to tell you what it's like in, you know, Sweden or whatever. Did it again. I think it's because I keep using the orthogonal controls, and they're pretty much worthless in this angle. Yeah, there we are. That's better. Alright, let's do this again. Unwrap. Mark some of this stuff as indicators. And mark some of this stuff as heavy hull. Oh. I beveled that right out of existence, didn't I? Whatever. All right, so people are talking here. 6 of 10 says, where will there be docking? Yes, there's definitely going to be docking, 6 of 10. There's not going to be much need for you to manually pilot into those docks, I don't think. I haven't quite decided yet. But docking is a critical part of this whole system. And there will definitely be both stations and ground facilities because the gameplay actually requires it. So, absolutely. Evil Luigi says, do you guys know of any good programs for pixel art stuff using graphic scale, which is old and somewhat restricted, but everything I've tried isn't free. GIMP is not great for pixel editing. In addition to the UI being kind of weird, it just doesn't have a lot of the same bits that you need. There are actually some really powerful pixel editing tools out these days. The problem is that I don't do any pixel art anymore, so I just see them on Twitter. I never actually play around with them, so I can't give you any first-hand advice. All right, so show me the new thing. Ooh, that's very orange. It's just that the materials are in a different order. There we are. That's a little bit more like what I had in mind, I guess. Oh, don't use Photoshop for pixel art. Just absolutely not. It's probably one of the worst pixel art programs you could get, so definitely don't do that. I mean, unless you really love Photoshop. Nothing wrong with using a tool outside of the way it's normally used. It's just that that one would be kind of rough. I guess it'll serve. There is our wart. Bloop. So we got a whole bunch of other things that we need to build for this ship. We've got to build a different kind of wart, so that's what we'll do right now. This is the solo wart, but we're also going to need to build a 2-meter diagonal wart. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to move this... No, got to zoom out a little bit here. Doop. Out like this, and then up like this, and then rotate it by 30, like that. And then we're going to go ahead and put on a mirror modifier, like always. Well, graphic scale is quite old. I mean, you're talking about something that was obsolete at least 3 or 4 years ago. It's sort of like, it's sort of like people who still use Sai, paint program Sai. It was great back in ye old days, but you definitely aren't going to find any solid use for it at the moment. It's better to upgrade to Clip Studio Pro or whatever similar program, because Sai just isn't up to snuff anymore. Yeah, free is definitely going to cause you an issue. There are a lot of pretty good 2D editors out there, but most of them cost, 15, 20 bucks and aren't free. I've never heard of anybody using PikeSen and Pixel Edit. Those are not ones I'm familiar with, which doesn't mean they're bad. I just don't know anything about them. I've never heard of a pixel art Unity plugin. 6 of 10 says that his sister is torturing the Tin Whistle, and in extension, him. Yeah, I have heard Aura a couple of times, but I think it's definitely a minority in the editing field. I think that most people um, don't use it. Sorry, I lost track of what I was doing here for a second. This one doesn't need as much decoration because it is a more complicated node, so it'll have more more stuff on it. It doesn't need to be as cute on its own. Well, even if you link it for me, I'm not going to be any help, but if other people are interested, they can certainly benefit from working together on pixel art editors. There's also a lot of people on Twitter that develop pixel art games, and it's worth knowing what they use since they are pros, even if the games are often small. Oh, you're talking about the plugin for Unity? I just never looked into it. I've never needed to edit pixels inside of Unity. There we are. Let's go ahead and set this up. Oh, and once again, I forgot to put the backside on. Oh. And this one we will call the 2-meter mount split. Oh, god damn it. 2-meter mount split. There we are. Hmm. 6 of 10, I think he's asking me to teach, but I am honestly not very good at Blender stuff. There are plenty of great modeling YouTube channels. I don't know if there's any Twitch ones, but there's loads of tutorials on how to model on YouTube. The problem is that there's no way to really get that groove except by doing it a bunch. So, you follow all these tutorials, and you're like, I still don't really know what I'm doing. I don't feel like I'm comfortable. And then you realize that it doesn't matter. As long as you're creating something that you can use and you feel comfortable using, you're doing it right. So let's see how this looks when we stick it onto the ship. You're in the way. So this one works at a 30-degree angle. So tick, 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 tick. There we are. And we duplicate this, move it down a couple of notches, and tick, 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 tick. Okay, let's go ahead and spin this. Local. There we are. I think that looks decent. I'm not upset by this at all. Ah! 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 Yeah, I kind of like the 30-degree angle sort of approach because it gives you a lot of dynamism to your ship designs. But it doesn't look like it's a perfect matchup. That's interesting. Kind of looks like it's off-center, even though both of them are perfectly centered. Oh. Ah. Well, that would be why. Let's go ahead and see if we can line this up properly. Yep. 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 There we are. That's better. So the problem was that our angles were wrong. Yeah, that's better. Now it's on straight. Yeah, the only animation program for pixel art that I'm familiar with these days is Spine, which is a which does I guess you call it skeletal animation. It's a tweeny animation rather than frame by frame pixel art animation, and it really depends on whether or not that's what you'd like. The individual pixel art animations are pretty rare these days, but I really like them. I was just talking about how I was going to have to replay Shining Force 2 and Shining Force 1. Gosh, that's a good question for you guys out there. Do any of you... Oh, it does. You're right. It does look like an axolotl. Do any of you know of a good strategy RPG that feels like Shining Force and is relatively recent? Most strategy RPGs either descend from Disgaea or Final Fantasy Tactics, and they don't have the same feeling as Shining Force. Spine is not a pixel art program. It's an animation program. Isn't that what I said? Yeah, Shining Force, the old strategy RPG with yogurt. Oh, no question. No question, Evil Luigi. It looks fantastic if you do it yourself. And if you guys have never played Shining Force, I feel even older. Great. Banner Saga isn't even vaguely similar, but it is a nice game. I own it, and I've played it. The problem with Banner Saga is that it has this, I don't know if you want to call it a heavy feel, but the characters it feels like low fantasy instead of high fantasy, and that's a big difference to me. The Shining Force's appeal was the fact that everything felt like uh, you know, whoosh bang D&D style gung ho high fantasy stuff, and that carried over into the combat. Whereas in Banner Saga, it feels like it's grungy and desperate, and that carries over into the combat as well. Of course, the problem is that if you want high fantasy stuff, you get Final Fantasy Tactics stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, hire 10,000 identical peons and then train them up. And it's like, I don't really want to do that. Give me some named characters with some plots. Evil Luigi says 42. I'm not sure why he said that. And Pink Hair says he's never been a console gamer. When I was young, I was a console gamer. I don't own any consoles anymore, which is a big part of my problem. I'm sure there are strategy RPGs on consoles. I was super happy that Disgaea came to PC, but unfortunately, it's not really a very good game on the PC. So. Oh, that wasn't right. Pink Hair, oh wow, everyone's talking all of a sudden. Um, is it everything in English? I only know the German translation. Uh, Presumably he means the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Yeah. Pink Hair says I grew up on Colossal Cave, Money Island, and King's Quest. 6 of 10 says too bad for console exclusives. Or says I've played Dandy Lol. Guten Tag, I looked German for a bit. I've forgotten most of them. I took German for a bit. I looked German for a bit. I'm dressed in lederhosen today. I never look German. I always look Irish. But Colossal Cave, Monkey Island, and King's Quest were all fantastic. I wasn't nearly as much of a fan of King's Quest as I was Quest for Glory. The Quest for Glory games were, and still are, some of the best adventure games that I've ever played. So if those of you out there who haven't played any games that I've been talking about, here are some good leads. Quest for Glory, especially Quest for Glory 4, and Shining Force. And Shining Force 2. I know that Shining Force and Shining Force 2 are available from most ROM download game websites. They're really old. Alright, so now we've got some stuff to put on our 2-meter mounts. I mean, now we've got some 2-meter mounts. Let's go ahead and make some stuff to put on them. Oh, I played Quest for Glory when they came out. It was super... one of those things, you're like really hounding your parents for when you're a kid. But I was really a big console gamer, except for things that I could play on either the Apple II or Quest for Glory. I don't know why I was so into Quest for Glory when I was a kid, but it was the right call. That was an excellent, excellent series. Except for Quest for Glory 5, which was a huge disappointment. So now we're going to go ahead and build a dish. A radar dish. Six of 10 knows where I live, lol. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Although I live in Boston. So, if you didn't know where I live, you do now. Let's build a radio dish. Yep. Eva Luigi says, are there some trends in America, England, which foreign languages are taken most often? I'm sure there are trends like that, but I think that the big ones are still French and Spanish. And probably Latin. Most high schools offer French and Spanish. At least they definitely offer Spanish, and I think they offer French. And now we're going to have language lessons with Arast. I'm sure he can teach us all of the most fun Russian words. And Evil Luigi is showing off his vague knowledge of Russia. I know as much Japanese as I did when I was 12. Ah, no, that didn't work. There we are. Time to get rid of half of this. Shh. Boom. No, no, stop. Stop. No. Whatever. We'll just do it this way. There we go. And now people are comparing their knowledges of various swear words. And duplicate and extend. Let's go ahead and shrink that down a little bit on the y-axis, and then rotate it on the x-axis, and then bring it down a touch, and then extend, rotate on the x-axis again. Extend, and rotate on the x-axis again. And then we'll bring it straight down. Boom. That is pretty lossy. Pretty lossy. Let's go ahead and make it less lossy. Zoop, doop, zoop, doop, zoop, doop. Edge loops. That's better. Arast says you could probably write a poem which was just swear words, and Matt Worst says that's just called rapping. I am not an authority on raps. I know you're all shocked to hear that. It's something that very clearly I should be excellent at. I rap on a whose line is it anyway level. Yeah, I think that Wayne Brady probably has me beat when it comes to Whose Line Wraps. But I could probably stand my own against Colin Mockery. In rapping, specifically. Technically true, 6 of 10. Technically true. Alright, now let's go ahead and make this tilt a little bit so that it looks right. We're not going to actually animate it. We're not going to bother. But we'll go ahead and just stick it on like it's supposed to be vaguely correct. And then we'll create a little catcher. Six of 10 says that if he had a cat, it would be a star, which is nice. I'm really happy that he's so confident in his pet abilities, his pet raising talents. There we are. We've got our own little antenna. Our own little dish. Let's go ahead and set it up with some materials and some UVs. We're going to want to have some hull. We're going to want to have some heavy hull. And we're going to want to have some other thing. We'll just use indicator. And let's go ahead and start to look at it here. Well, this indicator is going to be our mirror substance. So we'll just coat the inside of the dish with it and put a little bit here. The heavy hull, on the other hand, is going to be the part that's supposed to be heavy, i.e. this minus this, 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 and this, and this. Boom. And maybe this. There we are. And we got to name it. 2 meter, what do I want to call it? Radio antenna? Deep antenna? Long range antenna? Radio dish. Matt Worst recommends you put dots in your swear words. That's always nice because that way you can always around. Alright, so let's see how well this looks when we start to equip it with the various materials it's going to need. We're going to want to use hull. We're going to want to use some, probably interior, I guess. Okay. Hull. That's odd. Alright, so now we need our mirror substance, and I don't believe we have one. Just because this is a fairly new project, and I don't have everything. So let's go ahead and drop in a mirror. The mirror, of course, being just this. Boom. Now this is something that looks like crap in scene view. And it'll look like crap until we put a sky, backdrop in. But it will look relatively decent. It'll shine when it's actually in game view, I think. The question is, what the heck's up with some of these UV maps? They look awful. Let's go ahead and try and fix that up. Actually, I would prefer if you didn't make my nickname CP. Calling me Craig would be nicer. Or, whatever you'd like. Just CP has several other connotations, you know? Now the other thing we can do is put in some illumination. Oh no, it's all like silver. But we're not going to do that. Yeah, that'll be fine. Ah! There we are. We can slot it into our little bubble here, the 2-meter mount flat. And then we can drag the whole thing back and stick it on the ship somewhere. Just for now, let's stick it here. Ship is getting kind of crowded because I'm just testing parts. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. Doesn't look too good, but it doesn't look too bad. Eros says he's always trying to rush B in every game he plays. Why the hell is that? And I guess I have to ask him whether the B key on his keyboard is stuck. Because that's the only reason I can think of. Take a screenshot and go over to Twitter and tell them that I have taken a screenshot. Behold, I have done some random modeling in today's stream. It was totally overwhelmingly exciting. Well, that took a long time. I wonder whether or not the image properly uploaded. I guess it did. Probably because I'm streaming, it takes longer to upload. That would be what I would guess. Hey, guard. You're late. You're enough late that I am almost about to stop. People have said a lot of stuff now. CSGO. Looks like a busy ship. Been watching since the cursing, but in stealth mode. Good. So you haven't missed it. I haven't cursed recently, so you haven't missed very much at all. So I have enough time to model one more thing. What should I model for our spaceship? I could use cargo. I could do a better engine model. That one's pretty basic. I could do, well, the interiors would take more time than I have. Well, sleeping in is fine, and being depressed is only okay in moderation. But you are welcome to join in the chat stream for the 5 minutes we've got left, for sure. This is bothering me way too much, but the receiver on the antenna doesn't look like it's at the focal point. You are right. It is nowhere near the focal point. I wasn't really paying enough attention to do that correctly. That's a little bit better. Escape pod / hatch. I haven't settled on how the interiors are going to look, so I don't want to try and do anything that has an interior. I'm going to stick with exterior systems this week. Well, there's a difference between making the antenna accurate and making the antenna not hilariously inaccurate. It was sort of like modeling a car wheel and accidentally making it rectangular. It's a pretty obvious error. Engine, huh? Well, I have this thruster here, but it's not very good because I made it as the very first part. The hub spaceships here, they all use particle engines, and I guess I could make a reactor. I got a couple of people asking me for better engines, so let's go ahead and make a better engine. That'll be the last thing I'll do today. Well, that would be a waste, because these guys are early game scrubs. So I don't want them to look too good. So this is the 4-meter cowling that we're going to put around the engine. There's the old engine right there. Let's go ahead and move this up a little ways, and then extrude it back like this. So the old engine, if we look at the length, that's what it looks like. But if we take a look at the cowling that we need, let's pull up one of these cowling elements. That's what it looks like. So that's the interface we're going to be using. We'll be building ourselves a engine-specific grip later on, because I want something that looks dynamic, and these are very, very flat and rigid, but that's good. Oh, so Guard says, what are the tank-looking things dotted about? These are all liquid hydrogen containers. There's no reason for it to have this many. But because particle drives run on liquid hydrogen, at least they do in this case, they're basically fuel tanks. Guard says, why do things look good in Unity and not in Blender? The answer is because I haven't bothered to set anything up in Blender. So not only are all of the normals wrong in Blender, but all of the materials are bad as well, and there's no lighting. So in Blender it looks the worst it could possibly look. So this is going to be our cowling attach section, and that'll be fine. But we're going to want to do this. because we're going to need to put in an element that will latch on to the extra latch that we're going to put in when we have to do when we do the engine-specific mount. It's all optional, but it should work out. I'm actually going to go ahead and undo those. Yeah, well, one of the biggest things that people need to learn when they're learning modeling is how it's going to look, because it's very easy to model without understanding where you're going, but being able to picture it in your head and going, okay, I know exactly how this is going to look, will really raise your game. Even if you suck as a modeler, if you know where you're going, you're going to get something usable. Oh, that's fine. So we're just going to duplicate these rather than... Yeah, that'll do. Rather than distort the underlying mesh, I'm just going to duplicate them. And then we will just go ahead and do a little bit of beveling. I know you're shocked. Oh. There we are. And those are going to be the pins that we hook into when we build our actual final engine mount. It'll look fine. It'll look good. So, when we're building engines, there are a lot of considerations. One of the big considerations is whether or not you want it to look realistic, because space engines have no RAM intake. They're not like jets. And it can be very appealing to give them a RAM intake, which is what I did in this previous version. You can see that there is a nice circular intake here. That doesn't make any sense, but there are a couple of other options if you want to go more realistic. Like, for example, I could try to build a front end that has mounting elements or something similar. So that's what I'm going to try and do today, or, in the last couple of seconds here. We're going to try and build ourselves an engine that also has a built-in mount for fuel, or whatever you want to plug into an engine, I suppose. Guard says, I'm a little confused by the hook thing on the side. You said the top bits are pins to connect to the engines. What is the side thing then? Well, this is just a generic 4-meter mount. So you can mount anything that's got a 4-meter radius on them, but engines produce thrust. So I'm going to produce a secondary kind of mount that has a slot for those pins. But the player can go ahead and mount it on either one. So basically it has to be compatible with both kinds of mounts. Yeah, it could be a retro exhaust, and that's what happens in some games, but when it comes to particle engines, that ain't easy. The way that the particle engines work means that in order to have a retro intake, you'd have to actually have two entirely distinct thrusters inside of the chassis. It would be... I think it would be really hard to make that work in a way that felt right to me. I mean, with rocket thrust, you can vector it a lot, and you could do something where you're dumping rocket exhaust out into a different explosion chamber or whatever. But with particles, that's not going to work. I don't know which things people are responding to, because I lost track myself. So this is going to be our engine mount. The mount that we have on to make it so that we don't have an exhaust. Because exhausts don't make a whole lot of sense. I'd rather be without if I can. So we'll flip this over. And we'll go ahead and extrude. Grab X negative 0.1 and grab Y, Z, Y, negative 0.2. Negative 0.2. There we are. Guard says, what about a sensor palette? Well, the thing about a generic mount is that it can be a sensor palette. So I'm happy to just use a generic mount and let the player decide what they want to mount onto the engine. Maybe it'll even be coolant. You know, a coolant array would be a good thing to have on an engine. Yeah, the thing is you can mount all of those onto a 2-meter mount, so I figured that it would be nice to try and be both realistic and flexible. Not 100% sure that we'll end up as nice as I would like, but we'll try it. For now, let's go ahead and delete. Got a moth in this room. I missed. Wait, did I delete? When did I do that? That was dumb. That was frigging stupid. Try that again, this time without deleting things we actually need. Hurrah for Control Z, our hero. So here is where we get to the part where we're like, I'm not sure that we can continue to just attach the engine to the outside of... attach the mounting point to the outside of the engine. We're reaching the point where there's enough stuff going on that it might make more sense for us to have a different topology here. So let's go ahead and start to close in. And we'll just go ahead and extrude this out and over like this. And we will start to close off some loops here. And bring this down. Bring it in and out a little bit like this, and then close some more loops. And then bring these in and close a few more loops. Yeah, I'm thinking just one angled mount on the front. Well, we're going to actually have some other deco here, but I'm not sure how many mounts I want to put on the engine, because I want the engine to feel like an engine and not like a mount with an engine built into it. So basically, I'm going to go ahead and keep it to a very limited size at the moment. I wonder if I counted right. It's always risky. I counted right. Hurrah. Alright, so now we've got this set up here, but you can see that it's not very smooth. Oh no, what are we going to do to smooth it out? Well, how about we use the smooth function. Smooth. Oh, that didn't work. Undo! Smooth. There we are, that's better. Yeah, but more importantly, I want the thruster to be a thruster. And I want the add-on mount to just be something that's kind of useful, and not something that's the reason you put the thruster on the ship, if that makes sense. Alright, that should give us, it's not a terrible curve, but it's not great. Let's go ahead and add in some decoration, because this is a messy situation, and I don't like it. So what I want to do now is try to hook this up in a sort of spherical configuration. And I'm just going to copy a sphere that or a circular configuration. I'm going to copy a circle I already have and scale it up to the proper size. Like that. Yay! To be honest, I took the wrong approach. Let's go ahead and delete all of that. Yay! Now that I know that I want to have a circle here, let's go ahead and just start with a circle here. And we will merge it in rather than going the other way around. That way it'll look smoother. I won't have any problems getting the circle to look right if it's a circle to start with. Guard says, you're really making me want to work on a 2D version of this. And 6 of 10 says, we are eating cheese if you sneeze. I don't know what that means. But you're welcome to work on a 2D version of absolutely anything, Guard. People were having a big conversation about 2D image editors only a little while ago. But I think that they gave up. Oh, I moved it up because I'm not very bright. Six of 10 suggests Inkscape, which I have heard a lot of people say that they use, so that might not be a bad call. Yeah, that's kind of what I want. What are people talking about now? I guess I must have missed some lines of dialogue from you guys, because I have no clue what you're talking about. Which, is par for the course, I know. Oh, I see. People are talking about different kinds of drawing tools that don't make much sense to them for their chosen purpose. No, I think I liked it better before. So I want to hide this edge a little bit. I guess I'll go ahead and see how it looks in-game. But first we do have an errant vert. There we are. Sarden stopped in. Welcome back. We are basically done, but it's nice to see you again, Mr. Portugal. So now we have to build the actual thruster element, and I think what I'm going to want to do is break it out of this. I'm going to make this only cover part of the thruster. That was odd. That's kind of fascinating. We don't need any of that, though. We're going to do it this way. And what we'll do is we'll just merge this. Like so. Nice big set of faces. Spriter Pro. Spriter's good. At least I've heard it's good. Alright, so there we have a gap built into our system. And now what we can do is we can add in the actual engine ejection system. Nope. Well, I accidentally made it its own object. Don't set parent, join. There we are. So we'll flip this and reverse it. Shoop. Like that. There we are. There we go. Scale it up, scale it down. One of those axes. Oh, I don't need it that large. There we are. Now, I'm not sure how good this is going to look, but let's go ahead and find out. We'll call this the 4-meter thruster B. And we'll add in some materials. We're going to need some hull. We're going to need some heavy hull. We're going to need some glow, which we use as an indicator here. Yeah, that's one of the ones people seem to talk about a fair amount, so it's probably decent. I need one more. Ah, what did I do? I need one more band here. There we are. Zoom, zoom, and then this inner section, which is... I screwed that up, didn't I? Zoom. That's indicator there. And we'll want another bit of indicator here. And how about these tiny little wedges? Indicators. Now for the heavy hull, let's go ahead and make the inner sheath here all out of heavy hull. And this, heavy hull. This, and this, heavy hull. And lastly this, heavy hull. There we are, save. Let's take a look at how that looks. How expensive is it, Evil Luigi? Oh no, I forgot to delete half of it. Not a good sign. Let's try this again, but with deleting half of it. Better. Re-unwrap. Yeah, for a pixel art tool, that's upper end. On the other hand, most of them suck. I'm not sure I like how that turned out in the back. I may have to revisit this and change some of the ideas that I put into it. I like the basic idea of the mount, but I think I need to reshape the front bulge. I have a couple of ideas on how to do that better, and I think I can do them next time. So I'm not gonna... This machine is not the final version, but you can see the basic idea. I'm gonna have to shape up the rear end so that it looks more future-y, rather than like, I have no idea, a saggy balloon. Alright, so thank you for helping me out, guys, because I think that this is going to be good once I figure all of the details out. Although the version I created just now was terrible. Sorry about that. Let me go over into Unity, into YouTubity, and delete my streaming tag here. Deleted. And I'm going to sign off. I'll keep my eye on the chat for a little while, but I'm hungry.